I think my takeaway too, it's like in all of these moving through the ranks and my whole journey, I never really knew who I was. Like, and I think that started way.
That's crazy.
I know. I think that started before with just my upbringing. I grew up in a prominently white area, and I was the only Black girl in my grade from kindergarten through high school. And I spent a lot of my childhood saying who I wasn't or proving who I wasn't, that I didn't really spend a whole lot of time figuring out who I was. And then entering into a place like a big corporation, corporate corporation, I did a little bit of the same thing. And so like, yes, I had a lot of passion, which was driving me a lot in the beginning. But as I moved up, you're trying to meet or fulfill this version of a role, whether or not that was told to me, articulated to me specifically on what an executive looks like or how an executive should perform.
You're listening to Creative Leadership with Heart, a podcast that inspires people to take action and be the leader they were born to be. I'm Coach Rico, and I'm known for coaching and training executives, leaders, founders, and high performers at Fortune 100 businesses, startups, and more. I'm here to answer your questions about leadership and personal development while also asking you questions that can unlock your untapped potential.
Wait, let me close my...
Yeah, no worries. I'll edit this part out. Cool. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Creative Chutzpah. It's me, Rico Nasol, your host, with co-host Leonard Samuels. And today we have a really special guest, Tracy Saulsberry. She is an author and communications consultant. She was formerly the senior vice president of comms at NBCUniversal. She's a seasoned executive. She's now a leadership coach and an author. At 27, she became one of the youngest Black executives at NBC, where she led the publicity team that was responsible for campaigns across the biggest unscripted series like The Voice, definitely one of my Voice favorites, along with America's Got Talent, as well as live events like Billboard, the Golden Globes, and most recently, Tracy built and led the comms team at Peacock, NBCUniversal streaming service, where she served as SVP, like we talked about in the open, and she currently consults business leaders ranging from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies on comms, brand, and developing strategies for growth. So if that fits you, definitely reach out to Tracy. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So jumping right in, want to get a little bit of background so people can understand who you are. So what is it about the creative industry that got you excited about it and made you decide that this was a career for me?
Yeah, I've always loved storytelling. I think first and foremost, I consider myself a storyteller. And when I first started, I was like the kid who had a bunch of internships. I started as a broadcast journalism major, and then I thought I wanted to do magazine because it was more of that writing aspect. And I'll never forget, they sent me, I had an internship at Uptown Magazine, and they sent me to go cover this event with Michelle Obama's hairstylist, which I almost didn't go. And this is just a testament to pushing yourself when you're scared, because you never know what's there. And I went, and these people, when I arrived, they were handing me press kits and they were taking me around the space. And I said, "Who are you guys?" And they said, "We're publicists." And it's like, "Oh, I want to do that." It involved writing and interacting with people and events. And so I changed my major to publicity and then got internships at NBCUniversal at Oxygen. And the rest was kind of history. I loved it. I loved TV. It incorporated, the TV aspect that I love so much. I stopped taking ballet lessons when I was little just because I wanted to watch my Saturday morning show. So I've always loved TV, and it sort of melded everything. And I was lucky enough that when I was graduating, there was a position at NBC as an assistant. And so I started there. I got offered the job in my last, in the middle of taking my last final. I got the call and they said, you got the job. So I never even went to graduation. I just went to working, and I loved it. I was there. I was so excited about the work that I just immersed myself in it. And because of that, moved relatively quickly through NBCUniversal, and then found myself leading the teams at like a pretty young age, which was wild. But I learned a lot about managing, and then finally, I just thought it's time to get off the train. And so I really, and it wasn't that beautiful or easy, or it wasn't just like some epiphany, but I got off the train, and as I was trying to figure out like what I would do next, I kept going back to that storytelling element, and I always wanted to write a book, and so I started writing, and now I'm writing a book, and I'm telling other people's stories through comms, and it's been a journey.
Nice. There's a lot to dive into there, but I
Yeah,
want to even
terrible.
take it back. Yeah, even take it back a little bit further, because I always think this is interesting to get an idea of when people fell in love with it. So you said you quit ballet so you can watch your Saturday morning cartoons. Is there a specific cartoon or a specific moment where you're like, this is what my life is going to be about? Like it could have been about dance. It probably could have been about a lot of things, but you decided to go into entertainment, comms, etc. Do you
Yeah.
remember what that moment was, or show maybe?
Well, definitely the shows were, I believe that in Saturday morning it was like Hang Time, Saved by the Bell was, and I'm almost certain that was NBC, which is all just, it all comes full circle. And there's a picture that my dad took of me. I need to find out why I was there, but I was like a young girl, like around that time. And there was a picture of me in front of the NBC sign. But that's when I knew how important TV was in that like format of storytelling for me. And my dad is a voiceover artist, so I've always been sort of around and in the world. So that was like the introduction into TV aspect. But like I said, I always loved telling stories. Like I would write my own little stories in notebooks, um, and when I found publicity, it really melded that storytelling piece. And then I found out that you could do publicity in TV. It was like, this is it. I found all the things.
Yeah, on top of that, working with publicists and all that good stuff, it's a lot of people handling or personality handling if you're in the biz, right? So how did you manage to use that skill set and carry that through your profession?
I think maybe part of it was like growing up in it. I kind of feel like I understood them. Like my dad is an artist, and I understand the artist mentality, but I don't know. I always thought of, I think I got more invested in, like, again, back to that storytelling piece. I gravitated towards like the actors and the creatives, like the writers who were really passionate about telling their stories, like Gerard Carmichael and Lennon Parham and Jessica St. Clair. Like they were first and foremost telling stories, and I got really immersed in helping them to share theirs. And that was I feel like when I got close and understood the story that they were trying to tell, I understood the passion of maybe like the more challenging, right, personalities. When it's your like passion project, you just want it to be presented to the world in the best possible light. And so I tried to look at it from that regard. And then also just that it's like comical, right? Like part of it, it's all make believe. And I think we all in a way get like swept up in it. And so like when the water's too warm or it's bubbly water and not flat, it's like you have to just laugh at that, at the fact that like that's a conversation that you're having, and find sort of the humor in being able to be a part of the trivialness of it all, right? We're just into
That's it's so funny you say that, because it's almost like when you're in that environment, because I was in the environment too, it's like it's hard to take things super seriously when to your point you're like, is this you don't have boxed water? Can you give me boxed water? Like what is it? like it's in a can or something, or it's in a plastic bottle. How dare you serve me? So, like it's just so comical. But there's I wanted to get back because we glazed over really quickly. Your ascension at NBCUniversal. It's almost like, I found myself leading a bunch of teams, but talk about like what that transition was like from getting an offer during finals to like navigating your way to SVP at 27. Like, tell me, what did you have to, were you like, hey, I'm going to be an SVP by this? What did you focus on? What helped you fast track so much of that time?
I think in the beginning, it was pure passion and interest. Like I just, I immersed myself in it. I would be like, it sounds like corny, but I was the first one in and like the last one out, but I was genuinely enjoying the work, and I tried to get my work done. And then so that I could do the stuff that I thought was more exciting, like writing the log lines or reading the scripts. I remember when I was a assistant, it was pilot season, my first pilot season. And I was like, oh, I'm going to read all the scripts. All the publicists had to like write log lines and show descriptions. I was like, I'm going to read the scripts and do that for them and just like give it to them and see if they like it or if they don't like it. And some were like, oh, okay, thanks. And others were like, oh, great. Like you just did a piece of my work for me and it's decent. But I think that type of energy helped move me. I know that type of energy helped move me forward in the beginning. And I was there for 6 months and then got promoted to junior publicist, which was my first taste at it. That didn't really go over so well amongst my colleagues. I didn't have like the time that they had put in, and so that was my first taste of navigating like people not really being that excited that you're in a space or that you're there. And then from there I moved on to Style Network and I was a manager. And then I went to USA and was a manager. I think in all of those moments, though, I looked for, I think the through line is I did my work and then I tried to do the work that was in the position that I wanted. And I don't know if it was so calculated that I'm like, I'm going to do the role that's above me, but it was the work that I wanted to be doing. And so I made sure that I did my work really well, so that I could do what I wanted to be doing. And then once I got to the director level, which I think it's really important, you have a clear vision for what you want to do, making sure that the roles that you're in are servicing you and not just the company that you're within. And so I got a director role at NBC where it was traveling around with the stars of each primetime show, and I would go with them and do affiliate trips. So we'd go to like different parts within the country and I'd have to find other stuff for them to do, press stuff, when we were in each market. And for me, it was really important that I got to still work on shows because I didn't want to lose that muscle of being a show publicist. And so they're like, oh, okay, we'll give you like a special here and there, but that was asking for a lot. I was asking to essentially do 2 jobs. And so I took it. I took the specials, and then eventually I had shows. And at one point I had like 4 shows, big primetime shows, and I was traveling around with them. But that sort of asking for what you want and making sure that that's a part of also what they want, I think also helped me to elevate, because I was able to then show, okay, she can juggle multiple things. And also within me asking for that, I worked on a lot of unscripted shows, which no one wanted to work on, which is what led me to getting promoted to VP. And again, all back to like when you ask for things that are in line with what you want, it'll set you up for success.
And taking the initiative. It sounds like you're just taking a lot of initiatives.
I don't know if like every single moment it was so calculated, but it's just taking the initiative because it was driven with passion. And I didn't
biopic on you. It'll all be calculated.
Yeah.
Like Game of Thrones scripting.
Like even for, I think because I was also not so focused on, hindsight's 20. Maybe I should have been a little bit more focused on it, but I wasn't as focused on like how much money I was making or even necessarily the titles. It was just that I was doing the work that I wanted.
You just had passion. The passion was just coming through.
Yeah, I did write I'm really big on manifesting. And so I did write, I remember one year, every New Year's Eve, I write like what I would want for myself for the next year. And I had just written, I was 26 and I'd written, I want to be VP, but I didn't put, I put VP by 30. I had no idea that like a VP role was an option. I hadn't spoken about that with anyone. And then that next year I became a VP. But so I also believe in writing stuff down because it just sort of moves through you.
Yeah.
It's not like I went back and was looking at it, but I had like a clear vision of what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I love that because it's the energy you put out is the energy you get back, right? So like even if you don't remind yourself every day you want to be a VP, just the fact that you put it out in the ether and that's in the back of your mind, and because you're so passionate and you just did the work you wanted to be doing, all of those together put out this energy like, oh, Tracy deserves this. She wants this. Like she's doing everything that she can to get this. And I was the same with my teams where I said, don't focus on a title, don't focus on salary. We'll take care of that for you. And what I always used to get back was because I never thought about that stuff either. I just naturally, like people were like, hey, we want you to do this, do this, do this. But my team would always say, yeah, that's cool coming from someone with a title.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I didn't always have a title.
Yeah.
Right. Like people will say right place, right time, but I think it's passion mixed with like effort that really makes people successful or not. And I don't know if you experienced that. We can get into a whole generational thing. I don't want to necessarily get into that whole generational thing, but I think there is a little bit of that where, what can you do for me as opposed to, well, just do the work you want and then you'll get it instead of asking what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I dealt with that, especially when I was at Peacock and managing a team. It's just like a difference in framing, but it's a big difference. Not like what can you do for me, but like I said, just like make sure that the role is serving what you want to be doing. And if it's not, then you create the opportunity. You don't ask someone to give it to you.
And what is your advice for managing teams? Because we have a lot of business owners and they run teams and some of them are introverts. When I say some, I mean 98% of them. What is your advice when managing and how do you get that through?
Yeah, I had a lot of trial and error. So I think it's also giving yourself, I think this term is overused, but like giving yourself grace and that like you are a human and you're figuring out how to manage people. But my advice is I had got a coach. I asked for a coach like when I first started managing people because it's helpful to have someone not in the ecosystem of wherever you are that's helping guide you as a leader. So if you're able to have a coach, I highly, highly recommend it. Every big inflection point in my career, particularly in terms of managing, I got a coach. But also it's understanding your role. Like, how do you want to lead? I saw myself as a coach type leader. And so I think it's important to know how you want to show up as a leader, because that'll inform how you're speaking and interacting with your team. And the biggest thing I learned the first time is as a leader, your job is to lead the team to the business goal. It is not to manage their personal lives.
Ooh, that's a big one. Yes.
Yeah. When I first started on this pink couch, people on my team would come in and it was like a therapy couch. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I was like, understanding them as a whole person. But I would go home and I would just feel like I was drowning because I would take on, everyone else's issues that had nothing to do with the workspace. And I had a coach tell me, that's not your job as a leader. Your job is to lead with empathy, but it's not to get involved or to help them manage the parts of their life outside of the work. But it is to give them space if they come and say, I'm dealing with XYZ. It's to be understanding and then give them space to go manage that on their own.
Yeah. And I think also just like as a business owner, I wouldn't have considered a coach to be out there because it's not so like the algorithm doesn't bring them to us. But what do you think, Rico, as a coach?
Yeah.
Speaking of algorithm, like that's what brought us together.
Yeah.
I mean, I 100% agree with Tracy, not because I am one, but I benefited from having coaches, right? Whether they were ones external or even ones that I found within the company or within my industry, right? Like to have coaches and mentors to bounce these ideas off of and to find the people that you aspire to be and just like absorb as much as you can. And you're right, like the leaders, our jobs aren't to manage individuals. Our job is one, to make everyone around us better and whatever that means for each person. And it doesn't mean solving their, to your point, their personal lives, but how can I empower you to get your best work, make the best you version of you shine, right? And a lot of leaders don't. I call them managers now because like they feel like they have to manage people. But manager, the term manage for me is a process. Like you manage process, you manage tactics, but you lead people, right? So if you think that they're there to serve you, you are mistaken because you are there to serve them. Because employees and team members are your number one asset. You don't do anything without them. And if you're smart, you'll hire everyone that's smarter than you. And then
hire people that are smarter than you. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. You just get like people that are more talented, smarter, and whatever that complement you, and then just get out of the way and make sure they have all the tools they need to be successful, which is often easier said than done. But yeah, I totally agree with Tracy, what you're talking about. And with Leonard, like your question about getting a coach, if you can, I think it'd be super important because most people, they don't think to look inward. They don't think to look in the mirror when they're like, what's wrong with my team? They don't look at the mirror. They look at like all the individuals. I think if leaders looked in the mirror first, why is my team failing? They'll get more answers than they think.
Exactly. And Tracy, through your rise to stardom, which is really fast, by the way, because at 27, I think I was like just officially off of Craigslist looking at I was already doing stuff, and I was like, let me see what Craigslist has. Just,
I found Zappos through Craigslist, so don't knock it. I found Zappos.
I got
also
Craigslist.
Yeah, Craigslist. Interesting side note story. Craigslist was in the basement of the house in San Francisco that Zappos was founded in.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just a fun fact. But anyways, go ahead.
Craigslist basement? There's a basement.
Yeah, Craig lived in the basement of the house that Nick Swinmurn lived in when he founded Zappos.com.
Oh wow. Netflix needs to get on this doc, by the way. The basement of Craigslist. But Tracy, how important has diversity been through your profession and everything that you've been going through?
Yeah, it's super important. And when I had an opportunity to actually build a team, when I first became a VP at NBC, I inherited a team that already existed. And so that was another challenge of
not an easy thing to do, inherit the team.
No, I was, just their colleague working on projects with them the day before. And then the next day I was their boss. And I remember I had a coach who said, like, stop making your age a thing. You're making it a thing. But I was really uncomfortable in a lot of ways because I was managing people that were my age. And then I was managing people, most of them that were older than me, like substantially older than me. And I was struggling with trying to figure out, like, how do I lead a team of people? But I had to let the age get out of the way and realize why I was put in that position and how I could be impactful. But when I went to Peacock, I was excited because that was an opportunity for me to build a team that I had, always wanted to see. And so having diverse voices was really important to me, especially even like the diversity in interests. Someone who like loved musicals and show tunes, and another guy who loved anime, and someone from the Midwest, like not just ethnic diversity, but because I think that's how you actually get and create campaigns that are impactful and that have cultural resonance. And it also is helpful when in publicity there's some sort of crisis. situation, what I think might be okay in one space, I think it's valuable to have people on a team where people be like, actually, that's kind of offensive framed in that way. And to be able to have a space where you can have those conversations. So that was my favorite part of Peacock, and the thing I'm most proud of after leaving there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, people think automatically diversity means ethnicity, which that's just one aspect. There's like hundreds of aspects of diversity, right? And to your point, like when I was constructing a leadership team, it was more about like, I don't want people that were like me. Like, I came up non-traditionally through e-commerce. I had a director who came up through BPG. I had someone that ran the creative team at Microsoft. I had the production manager from the Coca-Cola studio. So like, we came from all these different industries, yet we were here leading the promotional tactics at Netflix, which is like film and TV. But I think we scaled better because we had people who scaled in different industries. We had different approaches to the work and all that stuff. So I think it really helps buck the trend, because if you're in this entertainment bubble, you'll only be thinking about things in the terms of entertainment. But if you start to add in e-commerce, tech, like consumer goods, stuff like that, then you're like, oh, okay, we have like good representation and the best of the best. Let's put some stuff together. So I love that you went not first for diversity, but first for like schools of thought, for perspectives, for tastes, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely hard in a corporate space. I started when I was at NBC towards the end. There were some positions that came available, and I hired someone who came from like a completely different industry, still in comms, but hadn't touched TV. And I had to like really fight to be able to make that hire. And it did require patience on my end, and like in understanding that I was going to have to make a commitment to sort of bring them up to speed on the language. But there was so much that they brought to the table, and like, it just, like you said, a different perspective of looking at everything. And now this person's like running comms at one of the networks, and so I also get like a little giggle to all the people that like thought that,
all the naysayers out there.
Yeah, all the naysayers, like,
you're taking a bet, right?
Now. Yeah. Look at them now. It's a rewarding, but there is the non-fairy tale version of telling that is like, it is, as a leader, a challenge to bring in different voices. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all up to, and this is, what we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to concede on, right? So we want the perspective. Are we willing to concede on like 4 to 5 months of educating on the industry?
Yeah.
Right. And lots of times it'll be worth it just because like they have a different perspective. But if that skill set isn't what you need, are you then still willing to concede that 4 or 5 months of handholding? Most likely not.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I always tell everyone when like they want to get promoted, or they want to move up. Like, the hardest thing you're going to do besides letting people go is hiring, because you'll get like 1,000 applicants.
Yeah.
And then you have to like weed through that. And then you also want diverse perspectives and backgrounds and everything. And it just makes it super difficult. So sometimes I ask people, be careful what you wish for, because you see what we do, we see what we want you to see. You don't see what we're doing behind closed doors, and like recruiting and like all these things.
Yeah. And having a clear vision of what you want for the team. Like, when I was new to managing and I was hiring, like, my barometer was just off. It was like, oh, do I like, can we have like good conversation? Do I like the person? It's like, yeah, that's an element of like how easily they would be able to flow within a team. But that's like maybe the least important, right? It's like the different perspectives and what do they bring? What does your team need? Where do you need to be taking the team in order to meet the goals? But yes, when you're looking through like a bunch of resumes and then interviewing, knowing like what you're looking for, and it's not like to find your best friend, it's to find what the team needs.
Yeah, you create a homogenous team that way. If you're like, just hire a bunch of people you'd hang out with. You're probably all like-minded. You probably all like the same things.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so the focus of our conversation is finding your identity. we are going that direction now. We have built you up, and now we gotta what happened? What changed? Why walk away?
Right. Well, I think my takeaway too, it's like in all of these moving through the ranks and my whole journey, I never really knew who I was. Like, and I think that started
That's crazy.
I know. I think that started before with just my upbringing. I grew up in a prominently white area, and I was the only Black girl in my grade from kindergarten through high school. And I spent a lot of my childhood saying who I wasn't or proving who I wasn't, that I didn't really spend a whole lot of time figuring out who I was. And then entering into a place like a big corporation, corporate corporation, I did a little bit of the same thing. And so like, yes, I had a lot of passion, which was driving me a lot in the beginning. But as I moved up, you're trying to meet or fulfill this version of a role, whether or not that was told to me, articulated to me specifically on what an executive looks like or how an executive should perform, or that was just my perception of what other people wanted from me. I think it sits like some place in the middle. But I wasn't functioning from my full self because I didn't even know who I was. And it wasn't until I left that I really realized that and went on a whole journey to figuring out who I was outside of this place where I had essentially like grown up. All of my 20s I spent there and more. But I knew I was more than an NBC publicist. I knew I was more than just a publicist, but I had to spend a lot of time figuring that out. And I think knowing that would have made being in a place like that less exhausting.
But you got to go on this journey, though. I mean, it's all part of the process,
which
I think people take for granted. Is like, I just want to get to the end result, but this is all part of it.
Yeah.
There is no end result.
Yeah.
That's the thing,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no there, right? So, and I was excited for this conversation, Tracy, because I felt the exact same way, right? The question I had to ask myself is, who am I without Netflix? Who am I without this title? Who am I without all the stuff that comes with this? Because it can be taken away, right? Like, if Netflix let me go, I resigned. But if Netflix let me go, who was I then? So I was so wrapped up in that. And to your point, it wasn't until I left till I started to understand who I was, because I couldn't hide behind that anymore.
Yep.
I couldn't use that as like, well, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm this. Like when people ask me, who are you? I have to really answer about who I am as a person, not as a company or as a title.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I knew it in there. This is like what I'm navigating in my book a little bit, but there was a lot of like, which I'll share in my book. There's some very like massive life decisions that I made that were because of the job. And I think if I would have known who I was, I would have made very different decisions and my life would have looked very different. I don't even know that I would have become SVP. I don't know, but because every decision could change the course. But I think when I stepped back, I was like, wow, that job really became me to the point where it was making decisions for other parts of my life that were outside of like the walls of that job. And that was the part that was kind of a little scary, where it's like, okay, I really need to spend time so I don't end up in that same position again. And it's been a journey.
Yeah, I think people should definitely like ask themselves that, because like that is a great point, where if you invest your entire life around a job, and especially like in this climate, a job that can be taken away from you so easily, like
which
what is
many
that?
of us just experienced. Yes.
That's what I mean, right? So like, what is that telling you? Like, like this thing, would you have done things differently? And I'm the same. Like, I don't know, things could have been differently. They couldn't have been. We can't go back and like change it. But I almost sometimes felt myself like you. I had the passion, But I was almost like towards my end of the career, I was like, am I doing this because people are pushing me and like everyone just expects me to do this? Or is this because I want it? And I couldn't tell anymore.
Yeah.
And then to your point, I was like just exhausted. Like we were probably feeling the same exact thing. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's like it's consuming my life. Like even when the Zoom or like the meetings end, my laptop closes, like it's just part of my life. Like you can't escape it. And that's the thing I would ask people listening is remember that you are you. You're not your job. You're not who you work for. You are you. So like do what's best for you. And I think if somebody would have told me that, I might have done things differently.
Yeah. And it's like, even if the outcomes would have all been the same and I would have made some of the same decisions, there's a way to move through those spaces and feel more easeful. And like, there's no reason your hair should be falling out, which like I had a period where my hair was falling. Like,
oh gosh,
you could be, there's no reason to have to exist in places like that. And I think it's as not simple, but simple as like knowing who you are. And because I think sometimes some people want me to be like, don't know corporate,
yeah.
live on your, and I'll never say that. Corporate afforded me like a lot of things. And it's not even saying I would never, ever go back into a space like that, but I know it would feel a lot different now because I have more of an understanding of who I am. And it would be more enjoyable.
And for the people that are just starting to come to this realization, let's just talk about like the mental health part of it just for a second. And they're kicking themselves now, saying, "I just wasted so much time." It's not a waste of time. They got to go through this process. But what is your takeaway looking at it from hindsight, Tracy?
Yeah, I think it's not a waste. It's hard to say anything's a waste of time, kind of like we were saying, because I don't know if I'd be here right now. And in the here right now, I have a really deep understanding of who I am. I'm writing a book, like I'm doing something I always wanted to do. And the book is about the journey. So I would be able to, who knows if I'd have a book if I didn't have the
it's also part of the story.
It's the story. And it makes
it's your story.
Yeah. It makes it a lot sweeter. So I think it's a reframe of, it's not, you didn't waste time, but like now is a time where you can embark.
Oh, good flip. Yes.
Yeah. It's almost like real estate, right? The best time was 10 years ago. The second best time is now.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the book because to your, like, I'm like reinforcing your point so many because I think our storylines are the same, but like to your point, all those things that happened even whether it was you or not making those decisions, they made you who you are today. So no matter what happened in the past, the end result is still who you are today. So tell us a little bit about the book you have, and we're lucky to get you because I think you just signed, right?
Yeah, I just
tell us a little bit about the book.
I'm super excited. For right now, it's called Inside a Black Girl's Journal, and it's called that because when I went on this journey of like, okay, who am I? It felt like everything fell apart for multiple reasons. I was leaving Peacock. I was dealing with some custody stuff with my son, and it just felt like my whole world was exploding. And I didn't know. The biggest question in all of it was like, who are you? And it was a moment where I had to figure it out so that I could articulate it in, that custody situation. And then it was also like I had to articulate it for myself. And I was getting like frustrated around the time because a lot of the self-help space is like, book a trip and go around the world and go find yourself and like
eat, pray, love.
Pasta, eat, pray, love. And I'm like, I can't do that. And I think most people can't. Like, I couldn't leave. I had a son and a life and bills, and that wasn't real. And so I remember feeling frustrated by that at the point, like it wasn't for me, like that I wouldn't be able to figure out who I was. And I just was like, I'm going to create my own Eat, Pray, Love. Again, not so calculated, but I started to build it for myself, and I really just explored what was around me. And a lot of that was time that I spent writing in my journal. And it's powerful, like just you and a piece of paper, how much you can learn about yourself and get to know yourself. And so I have like a part where I talk about dating yourself, where like every night I would just go in the journal and like ask myself questions. And I began to like the person that I was meeting on the page, and I began to understand myself. Then I explored the world around me. So the book is just a journey through that, like showing sort of the steps that I took and how people could do that in their own life. And then I'm showing pages from my journal, because part of the process that was also frustrating to me was you would see these like beautiful affirmations that like probably they poured over and they felt really perfect, but I didn't see how they got there, like where they started. And so I want to show people that it's messy and it's like bubbles, and it's half sentences, but within those half sentences and the scribble, you actually are moving yourself forward. And that's all you need to be doing. So yeah, that's it. That's the book.
That's I'm definitely gonna get my copy whenever it's ready.
Yeah.
And I love that lifting the veil, and because people, it's almost like Instagram, right? People see something on Instagram and they're like, oh, that person is just Zen, and like we're just born that way, which is totally not, right? Like it's a lot of work to hold the mirror up and work on yourself day after day after day, because sometimes it's easy just to fall back into old habits. But I love that you're being vulnerable like that and actually showing your work, because a lot of people don't see the work. To your point, like you get one of those like Zen is F books and stuff, like they have all the affirmations, but how did you get there?
Yeah.
Like, cool, I want to be like that, but how do I get from where I am now to there? And like you are able to do that.
Plus your story is tangible. I mean, it just makes sense. As much as I would love to be able to book a trip to Italy 2 weeks from now and say, I'm going to leave everything behind.
Go to Bali and just eat, right? For like
that sounded great. But there's so much that's right around you that so many of us don't even explore, even if it's just going to like, and I talk about the different things I did in parts of town that were like down the street, but I just never, explored them because it wasn't my comfort zone. And there's so many lessons in really small moments where we can learn more of ourselves.
And who would you say this book is for?
I think it's for anyone who's at particularly like a transition moment. But I wish I had it before that. Like I wish I would have had this book when I first became a VP, or even before that, because maybe it could have given me some clarity to navigate a little bit clearer. But I think we should all be asking the question of who we are, and we should consistently be asking ourselves that. So even now and today, I sit and like go back to my identity statement and see what iterations or changes I want to make to it now that reflect who I am now. And what I hope to show in the book too is like I'm not some fully realized, like I don't have it all figured out, and there's parts of me that I still need to grow on. There's spaces that
there are pages yet to be written.
There's pages yet to be written. It's never over.
And it's an evolution of self, right? Because who I am today probably won't be who I am in 15 years, right? Because my kids will be out of the house, right? Like my context, everything in life would be changed. Like even today, like I say, father, leader, creative coach. I'm a father today. I will always be, but I won't be the same version of a father in 15 years, right? So like it's a constant evolution. So you're never the same person, even just year to year.
Yep.
So and like I love that question, like who am I now? Like this is who I was in 2023. Who am I now?
Yeah. There's this his name's Torrey Roberts. I like quote him a bunch. I read all his books, but he says to do a practice of like writing your identity statement and pasting it on your mirror, like someplace where you see it every day, and every day reading it to yourself. And I've done that, and I'll read it and I'm like, oh, and it'll just be like the difference of a day. Like, and I'll be like, oh, that doesn't resonate. So like, let me make a change now. And I think repeating to yourself every day before you enter the day, like who you are, and checking to make sure that that's still who you are. Because if you don't, people are going to go out and people are going to do that regardless. People are going to try to define you because that's how they make sense of us and
the world
space. But yeah, when you know who you are, it's so much easier to move through it.
And for anyone that's looking to write a book, tell their story, just anything, fiction, nonfiction, or anything in between, what is your advice to them? Because I feel like a lot of people, they have the issue of, oh, the book needs to be X amount of pages. I can't write that many pages. But also the book doesn't need to be done in a week, hopefully.
Yeah.
But, yes. What's your advice?
I would say just start writing. That's what I found. It took me a year, like going through this whole journey too, to actually release the idea that like I had to be in another sort of corporate space or structure that I was. And so I was like talking to all these people and I'd get far and then I'd be like, oh, that doesn't feel right. But I just like couldn't let it go because I couldn't let that part of my identity or what I thought was my identity leave. And so, but in the spaces of extending conversations far too long, I would write. And it started just like a little bit each day. And then I got to a point where I'm like, oh, I think there's something here.
Yep.
And I mean, one thing I would say too is, which is just sort of consistent with how I've approached my career, is I definitely didn't go the proper channels. I didn't even know what the proper channels were, but I was passionate about what I wrote. And I reached out to a president of a publisher on LinkedIn, which like I don't think you're supposed to do.
You're not.
You're not. Didn't know that. And it actually didn't even. It's not. My book is with Abrams, but that publisher worked with me and then connected me with an agent, which again is like not how it works. But at every point, I was just, and even in my initial outreach, I was just like, I have a story to tell and I don't know how to go about telling it, but I feel really passionate about it. And I think when you're moving with passion, people, like the right people, will just get in the line of where you're supposed to be and help you move to the next phase. And then I was just like, it got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a book. I don't know who it's going to be with.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it.
Yeah, the proper step is to send out query letters for anybody that's listening.
Query letters to get an agent.
And also get an agent if you can, yes.
Yeah.
Step by step, and you went right to the source, which is also great.
Yeah. But it's like we talked about before, right? The energy you put out is the energy you get back. So it's like there's no option B. Like I am going to get this book published. So it's either going to be with you or not. Yeah. And then I'll find whoever it's going to be, right? And that's the energy you're putting. You're not putting in this energy of lack or desperation. You're putting out this energy of passion and excitement. So that will rub off on a lot of people.
Yeah, kind of letting go too. If someone asked me the other day, oh, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think before I used to be able to do that. But sort of part of also going on this journey is I kind of released, like, I don't know, I see what's right in front of me. And that's okay. That's like enough for me right now. Yeah. And I know that it'll continue to evolve if I'm moving from passion and good intention. And
that's so important to actually just like kind of staple down onto is what's important in front of you. Because we get so tied up into like, what's happening in 5 years? What am I going to be in 10 years? But why don't you just look in front of you and then focus on that?
Well, because also, like what I saw is what you thought it was going to be. It's not going to be like, and it all came at once. Everything I thought became no more. And so even someone said worrying, I mean, and having a 5-year plan isn't necessarily worrying, but worrying is like wasted creative energy. It's like I could be using that creative energy on what is right in front of me and then continue evolving and building on, where I want to go, but focusing on where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm a huge self-help book person. Like what you're talking about, like for me was Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, right? Like, am I okay right now? Am I okay tomorrow? And then so from that, like, why am I worrying about things that haven't happened yet?
Yeah.
Like 5 years from now, like I don't know where I'll be in 5 years from now, but like, why am I worried about that?
Yeah.
As long as I'm okay right now, I'm okay. I'll be okay tomorrow.
And whatever you're worried about is probably not going to happen. Like it's
yeah. And I think Mark Twain, I use this Mark Twain quote. He says, worrying is paying debts you don't owe.
Yo.
Right?
Worrying is what?
Paying debts that you don't owe, because you're spending your time, your energy, all these things on something that probably won't happen. So it's like you don't owe that debt. So why are you wasting your time and energy paying it off?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I highly recommend, speaking of Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth is like, ooh, when I read that, it just opened up the whole, that was also like at the beginning of my journey, a book that I read that just completely reframed my mind. It's a good book.
Nice. That was going to be a question I had, but one question that we usually ask is, what is, for people who don't know you, what is one thing that they would be shocked to learn about you?
And it can't be that you have a book coming out.
Or that you're an SVP at 27.
Yeah. Or a VP at 20, VP, but still cool. What would be one thing people don't know about me? I mean, I think people do know. I really like to paint. But I think in the past, what people have said is like, oh, you're so calm. And I'm actually like, I'm now a lot calmer than I was, because I worked on like the worrying and how to, but I think I'm just a human, and I'm like a lot less strong than I'm perceived to be. And I think it's actually been important for me, like people in my life, to like understand that aspect of me. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And for folks that want to reach out or want to work with you, what's the best place for them to find you, to get in touch with you?
Actually, like LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
It's coming back.
Yeah, I'm a big LinkedIn person too. That's where most people find me.
Yeah, LinkedIn. My Instagram is Soft Sweet Life, like sweet, like an office suite.
And for folks, we'll put all these links in the show notes.
Yeah, so. But LinkedIn is the best spot. Find me on LinkedIn. Nice.
Well, thank you for joining us. Leonard, got any last questions for Tracy before we wrap?
I'm excited for your book. Is there any time that we can expect
when's the
release?
Expected launch date?
Spring of 2026. So we got
okay, great.
We got a while now. I'm just writing it and making sure it's exactly what I want to put out into the world. But mostly that it'll help people is my ultimate goal.
Yeah, and if people are listening to this and it's 2026, you should see the link in the show notes and pick it up. And if you have pre-sale, we'll definitely drop the link for any pre-sales too.
Yes, I will give that.
Cool.
Well, it takes chutzpah to be creative, and you've got it in spades. So thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you, Tracy. That's Leonard. This is Rico. This is another episode of Creative Chutzpah. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of Creative Leadership with Heart. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. If you're ready to make huge, lasting change in your life, then what are you waiting for? What will your life look like if you took action today? What would it look like if you didn't? If you're serious and you're ready, book your free strategy session today, and let's make your future a reality.